He drove the same roads every day. He stopped at the same coffee shops. He walked into the same Manhattan office building, rolled up his architectural blueprints, and spent his days designing structures that would house ordinary American families. His neighbors in Massapequa Park, New York, a quiet, tree-lined suburb on the South Shore of Long Island, knew him as the big guy with the unkempt appearance who lived in the worn-looking house on the corner. His kids grew up there. His wife of over 20 years came and went from that same house. And for over 3 decades, while he attended block parties and client meetings and Christmas dinners, Rex Heuermann was hunting women, selecting them, strangling them, dismembering their bodies, and dumping what remained of them in the tall marsh grass along a desolate stretch of Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach, less than 15 miles from his own front door. The man who killed 8 women across 17 years of terror was not a drifter. He was not a loner hiding in the shadows of society. He was a 62-year-old architect with a business card, a mortgage, and a family photo on his desk. The story of the Gilgo Beach murders begins not with Rex Heuermann, but with the women he chose as his victims. Women whose names deserve to be spoken clearly and whose lives deserve to be remembered fully. The case first spilled into public view in 2010 when investigators began finding remains along Ocean Parkway while looking into the disappearance of another woman, Shannon Gilbert, whose death was ultimately ruled an accidental drowning. What they found instead was something far darker than anyone had imagined. The remains of 4 women, later known as the Gilgo 4, were discovered in December 2010 in the tall grass off Ocean Parkway. Maureen Brainerd Barnes of Norwich, Connecticut, was 25 years old when she disappeared in July 2007, a mother of 2 who had turned to sex work after being unable to find other employment. Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthelemy, and Amber Lynn Costello were found alongside her. These were not nameless statistics. They were daughters, mothers, sisters, real human beings with real lives, real dreams, and real people who loved them and searched for them and never stopped wondering what happened. The case went cold after those initial discoveries in 2010 and 2011, remaining one of the most frustrating and high-profile unsolved serial killer cases in American history for over a decade. Then, in 2022, something shifted. Detectives working the case linked Heuermann to a pickup truck that a witness had reported seeing when one of the victims disappeared. Eventually, investigators matched DNA from a pizza crust that Heuermann discarded in a Manhattan trash can to genetic material extracted from highly degraded hair fragments found on the women's remains. A pizza crust thrown into a garbage can on a New York City sidewalk. That single piece of discarded food, retrieved by detectives who had been quietly watching Heuermann for months, was the thread that unraveled everything. In July 2023, Rex Heuermann was arrested outside his Manhattan office and taken into custody. The suburban architect with the family photo on his desk was finally in handcuffs. What investigators found when they searched his home was deeply disturbing. Prosecutors revealed that Heuermann had visited sex worker websites and pornography sites depicting the torture and dismemberment of women, and had read extensively about the Gilgo Beach murders themselves, apparently following the investigation into his own crimes with obsessive interest. District Attorney Ray Tierney pointed to a planning document where, prosecutors said, Heuermann had methodically blueprinted how to select, kill, and dispose of his victims, calling him a remorseless and sadistic serial killer who only cares about himself. The blueprint, the planning, the research into his own case. These were not the actions of a man who had snapped in a moment of madness. These were the actions of a predator who had been operating deliberately, calculatedly, and without remorse for nearly 3 decades. As the charges mounted and the evidence grew more overwhelming. Heuermann pleaded guilty in April 2026 to murdering 7 women: Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthelemy, Amber Lynn Costello, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Valerie Mack, Jessica Taylor, and Sandra Costilla, and admitted in court to killing an 8th victim, Karen Vergata, though he was never formally charged in her death. He said he strangled his victims, many of them sex workers, and dismembered some of their bodies. The admissions in that courtroom in April 2026 were among the most chilling moments in a case that had produced no shortage of horror. A man sitting calmly in a suit, confessing methodically to 8 murders spanning 33 years, from 1993 to 2010, as if recounting items on a contractor's checklist. CNN. Then came the sentencing. On June 17, 2026, in a Suffolk County courtroom in Riverhead, New York, 13 family members of the victims faced Rex Heuermann directly and delivered statements that split the hearts of everyone in that room. Liliana Waterman, who was just 3 years old when her mother Megan was officially reported missing, and only 9 when she died, told the courtroom, "In an instant, my world shattered." Amanda Funderburg, sister of victim Melissa Barthelemy, recalled how Heuermann had tormented her after the murder by calling her and telling her he was letting Barthelemy's body rot. Turning to stare directly at him in the courtroom, Funderburg said, "You can look at me while I'm talking. It has been about 17 years since we've spoken." Jasmine Robinson, a cousin of victim Jessica Taylor, told Heuermann plainly, "A million years isn't enough. Nothing will ever make this right." And Violet Swagger, another cousin of Jessica Taylor, delivered perhaps the most devastating line of the entire day. "You chose small women because you're nothing more than a weak, disgusting coward. Netflix, to dumb, Netflix, to dumb." When it was Heuermann's turn to speak, the man who had planned murders with architectural precision and followed his own investigation for years had almost nothing to say. "There are no words I can say," he told the court quietly. "The words I would say have no meaning, and I'm going to leave it there." Judge Timothy Mazzei was not so restrained. The judge looked directly at Heuermann and said, "You're a disgusting and small man, if you're a man at all. You're a coward." Then he handed down the sentence that removed Rex Heuermann from the world permanently. Heuermann was sentenced to consecutive life sentences in prison, without the possibility of parole. As he was led from the courtroom, chants of "ogre" and a round of applause broke out from the family members, who had waited years, in some cases decades, for this moment. Netflix Tudum +2. The case of Rex Heuermann is one that will be studied for years, not just for its horror, but for what it reveals about the terrifying ordinariness of evil in America. He was not a monster who looked like a monster. He was a man who looked like your neighbor, your co-worker, your client. He had a business card and a drafting table and a house on a suburban Long Island street. He spent the past 3 years alone in a segregated cell, reading crime novels and occasionally corresponding with the infamous Happy Face Killer. 8 women are dead. 8 families are permanently, irreparably broken. And somewhere on Long Island, the families of those women can finally exhale. Not because the grief is over, but because the man who caused it will never again walk free on the same earth as the rest of us. Justice came slowly, quietly, and 30 years too late for some. But it came.